Okay, so I'm Shantae. I use they, them pronouns. I'm calling from Canarsie, Munsee, Lenape, Hoking territory, which is also known as Brooklyn, New York. And the section of Brooklyn I live in is Prospect Lefferts Gardens, which is a smaller section of a larger section called Flatbush. So I love my neighborhood. And I'm really glad you're all here. I've decided, I think, what I've kind of come to through my own practice and talking to my teachers is, I think, in these monthly practices, which are open to everyone, both students I work with formally and anyone who wants to join. So some of you are students, some of you are not. As I want to really focus on three practices. So White Tara, which we did last month, Tonglen, and then various wind horse practices. So guided rest or ground lungta, the more formal 5-step wind horse, or whatever it is. I don't know, there's so many. And then later I would like to go deeper into some of the wind horse practices, which are, there's some visualization practice, there's a chant, there's a calligraphy practice, and there are some body-based practices. So that'll probably be more next year, but I really want to, it's really kind of come to me that I think those practices are most helpful. The White Tara is both an internal, as a visualization practice, a very traditional visualization practice, a tantric visualization practice coming from the Indo-Himalayan tradition, which is about envisioning oneself as the only female Buddha who has 21 emanations. She does a lot of work. But White Tara is about healing self and others, right? And it's for health, which, the whole world needs. And, we're in this moment where COVID in particular is moving through different countries. No one is safe. First it was China, then the US. I mean, still the US, we still are at 65,000 cases a day, but India and Brazil are really suffering right now. And so that kind of practice is, a lot of tantric practitioners have been doing this White Tara since the beginning of the pandemic. So that's a compassion practice also, but it's really geared toward health, travel, wellness, right? For self and others. And that's a visualization practice with a mantra. Tonglen is a little bit different. It comes from the teachings, Tibetan teachings from Longchenpa, and it really is about cultivating, working with, it's almost the inverse of some of the things that people do. So sometimes with like new age things, people are like, breathe in goodness, breathe out badness. Well, this is the inverse. Breathe in badness, transform it through your own heart, and then send out the antidote. So this practice can be very difficult. And so it's really recommended that one is grounded in sitting practice, right? Just being on the earth, between earth and sky. And then you do this practice, and then you couch it with another session of sitting. And then the wind horse practices really are about, in many ways, working with the elements and being in the world with real confidence, and working with chaos. So each practice is geared towards working with that. Sometimes it's about grounding, sometimes it's about creating, sometimes it's about magnetizing, sometimes it's about cutting. So those practices go deeper, and so those are the main things I think I want to work with as groups. Individually, students have different practices, but okay. So there's a lot of reading on Tonglen. And so today I'm going to really be talking to you from this book, the Tonglen book by Pema Chodron. And there's also some other stuff I'll send you after, or I'll have Daisha, my assistant, send you. But Tonglen practice formally, because so you can do it informally, which we won't really talk about today. You can kind of do it on the street where you're just like, you see someone suffering, you maybe can't do anything, you just kind of send, experience that suffering in your heart and send them an antidote. But when we're doing formal practice, it's a little bit more intense. It can be. So there's two things about Tonglen that I just want to say. So one is it's different than loving kindness practice. So a lot of times people are like, oh, Maitri, or so loving kindness practice is more about kind of sending out loving kindness. But Tonglen is compassion practice. And compassion, at least in English or coming from the Latin, means to suffer together. So it's really about experiencing each other's pain and lessening each other's pain. So it's not about escaping pain. It's not about bliss. And these practices come at the level of the bodhisattva, because when you take those vows formally, you're saying, I am, for every lifetime I've lived, for this lifetime and every lifetime after, I am dedicating myself to the enlightenment of others. That is my work. And if you ever read Shantideva's work, who wrote basically the book on the path of the bodhisattva, he's like, why did I say I was going to do this? Because this is really hard. So there's two kind of aspects of it. One is well, I won't get into that. One is really, first is really grounding yourself in your body and your local environment where you are, so that when we begin to do the more taking in or the more experiential aspects of it, that you also are feeling your body. And the other is kind of relaxing with whatever arises. So we're not trying to solve the world's problems with our mind or our heart. It's really, we're trying to experience what arises when we bring these things to mind. So which we'll go through. So we're not trying to be like, fix that, but it's more like a process of tenderness that we experience in the heart center. So there are 4 stages in the formal practice. So first, as I said, we'll do this together. We'll bracket it. You'll sit for a time. If you're doing Tonglen practice, say you'll sit for 5 minutes. You do Tonglen for 5 or 10 minutes. You sit again for 5 minutes. You do shamatha, Tonglen, shamatha. Okay, so that's the kind of shape of it. And then there are 4 aspects, 4 stages. So the first is flashing a sense of openness. Okay, what does that mean? So experiencing the openness of the sky, the expansiveness of the sky and your environment. So the kind of outer openness, and also experiencing the openness of your heart. So that you're touching into that openness to remind yourself that the source of compassion is limitless, and that you're connecting to that source rather than trying to just generate it from yourself. You're plugging in so that that source can flow through you, right? And be a renewable source of compassion. So that's the first stage. And then the second is we work initially with a very general sense of texture before you get into like a person, place, or a thing or situation. So we work with the textures of both kind of claustrophobia or kind of like stickiness, smokiness, stinkiness, and then freshness. So we can experience the difference between the sense of kind of the discomfort and then its antidote, right? Cloying or choking feeling or the claustrophobia, and then spaciousness and freshness. So that's the second textural stage. The third stage is then working with specific situations. So that could be people, that could be places, that could be things, that could be concepts in our own lives. And you work with both the feeling of the difficulty and then its kind of antidote. And then sometimes, actually coming from the Maitri practice, sometimes we'll add different categories, but then the fourth stage is that we expand that practice out to everyone. You know, we imagine other people's suffering. So those are the four sort of formal stages. And then, you know, there's playfulness in there. So what we'll do is well, first, let me just ask, are there any questions on that?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about stages, is it stages like over days, months, or years as you get more practice, these are different things that just come up? Or is it stages as in literally in one Tonglen practice, these are kind of
The latter.
Okay.
The latter. It's so when we walk through the practice, I will guide you through each of the stages of Tonglen in one practice session. Yeah. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you.
And it's also both, right? So that it's both very local, and you walk through these practices, and then over time your experience deepens and widens. But yeah, it's literally the 4 things that we will do as the practice of Tonglen.
I don't know if I have a question, but thank you, Shante, because I think I've always combined Maitri and Tonglen together. So you've actually helped me understand the difference. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had that clarity. I've always sort of practiced them as one. So this is very helpful.
Yeah, so Maitri and Metta are different, right? Loving kindness practice doesn't have the same kind of, I think it's not as difficult, you know, as the compassion, as this Tonglen practice. So yeah, they are 2 different practices. And, you know, at some point I could also do, we could do Maitri practice too in a group session.
How do you spell Maitri? I don't know that term.
Maitri, loving kindness. Maitri, yeah, Maitri. Any other questions before we try it out? Vicky in here. Hi, Vicky. We're just about to start the practice, so just strap in, and then we'll circle back to you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. I'm recording it so you can catch up.
Okay, thank you.
So the first thing I'm just gonna offer you is to find a relaxing position for yourself. That could be sitting on a chair, on your couch, on a cushion, on the floor. And it's, again, it doesn't have to be any kind of formal, it's just sitting. I'm sitting in a chair. I find it easier to teach this way than to sit at my shrine. So I'm sitting at my desk. And so just sitting or laying down or standing. I wouldn't recommend walking for this particular practice, but the three other traditional positions of sitting, standing, or laying down are just fine. And really, the idea here is to relax by first feeling your relationship to the earth. Whatever points of contact your body has with the earth. So if you're sitting, your seat and your feet, maybe your legs, your back. If you're laying down, all the points along the, if you're laying on your back, the back side of your body, from your heels to your calves, to your buttocks, to your back, shoulder blade, head. And if you're standing, it's really the 4 points of the feet, feeling of solidity of the earth, who she is our support and our first mother, both metaphorically and literally. We are made of earth. And so feeling that that sense of gravity holding you gently, letting you sink into your seat comfortably. And feeling a sense of then connection above you, the vastness of the sky, the father sky, stars and planets and asteroids and meteors and other beings and detritus, all in the sky, that's our siblings, that we're also made of the same material as the stars. And then feeling our more local environment at the heart level, or level of the beings on earth. Checking our posture so that the front of our body is soft and open. The back of our body is strong but relaxed, upright but not uptight. There's a balance between soft and strong. That our spine is lengthened and it is grounded in the earth, going through our body upward, coming out of the top of our head, and our body drapes over that spine that's like a golden bamboo rod, flexible, filled with light, strong. Relaxing the points, your habitual points of tension. So some of us, that's our hips, our jaw, really the face, the whole face, the forehead, the jaw, the throat, the back of the neck, shoulders, around the eyes, just letting it melt. Nothing to prove, nothing to get right. Simply trying to experience our experience. And a broad and open chest will help us to experience our tender heart, which really is the place where our compassion and love reside, in the heart center, not just the physical heart, but that whole center of our chest. We're just going to sit for a few minutes to ground in the experience of experiencing what we're experiencing. Your eyes can be relaxed, so either open or closed, it doesn't matter, but as long as it's soft. Turning your attention to the feeling of your body breathing, the whole body. And I want to really draw your attention and your awareness, so your mindfulness and your awareness, to the feeling of the body breathing. Sort of a global experience where we relax control and we're just experiencing the feeling of breathing. Not trying to get anywhere or do anything, or control our thoughts. Really, we're feeling. The language of humanity is feeling. Wherever you feel that breath. If your mind or your body or your emotions start to feel like they want to be elsewhere, when you notice that, that's amazing. That's your awareness saying, hey. And then you can make a decision with your mindfulness to just come back to the feeling of your body breathing. So awareness and mindfulness work in tandem to gently discipline us, which is just gentle consistency. Nothing hard, nothing mean, nothing rigid, but soft like the movements of a Tai Chi master. Fluid form. And now we flash on openness, and that can be the endless sky or the ocean, or whatever makes you feel like you're in contact with vastness, vast space, vast resource. Quite brief, but just connecting with that vastness for a moment or a few moments. We're not staying there, we're just plugging into the vastness and then coming back into the experience of our own body. And so we're going to move into the texture quality. And here you can, sometimes people find it more helpful to have their eyes closed, open, it doesn't matter, whatever makes you feel safe in your experience. I want to remind you that you can come out of the practice anytime if it feels too overwhelming. That's not a problem. You can just return to shamatha, to peaceful abiding, or you can just come out of the practice fully and just be in your body, connect with the earth and sky. So in this part, we really synchronize the breath with the experience of the texture of claustrophobia and of freshness. So you kind of breathe in that sense of claustrophobia, smoke, stickiness, stinkiness, heaviness. And you breathe out freshness, expansion, cleansing, aromatic. We'll work with that. Breathing in that kind of heavy, claustrophobic, smoky feeling like a smokestack, and breathing out the fresh, clean spaciousness. So we'll work with that for a couple of minutes. Breathe in the claustrophobic quality, breathing out the spacious, fresh quality. So again, when we're breathing in, we're feeling hot, damp, thick, heavy, and cramped. Breathing out, we feel light, cool, fresh, peaceful. And we're working with kind of texture and feeling and mood, not really concept here. So you may feel some heat in your body, and then you may feel some coolness. So first, we're really working with those textures, the felt quality of claustrophobia and spaciousness. And when you've made contact with those qualities, you can really drop the words, hot and cool, or heavy and light. And breathe in however you feel is helpful. If you want to breathe in and breathe out deeply, slow, fast, medium, shallow. The main point is to work with these qualities. Trying to spend equal time with both breaths. So we want to be able to experience the in-breath with a sense of taking in that heaviness, but equally on the out-breath, experiencing that lightness. So that we don't get too poverty-stricken in our in-breath or too spacey on the out-breath. If you begin to feel overwhelmed, it's traditionally taught to really try to breathe with your whole body, not just the mouth and the nose, but breathing with all the pores, 360 degrees, and breathing out with all those pores. So really using the whole body to breathe in and breathe out. Now I'll ask you to bring to mind a situation that's very difficult for you right now, that's real for you personally. Person, place, thing, or situation or concept that's impacting you right now. If it helps to visualize the face, you can do that, or their name. So as you breathe in, you take in the suffering of that experience for you or that person or that situation. And when you breathe out, you're really sending out whatever you feel might heal the situation. Again, if it's difficult to, if it's getting too much in terms of the person and the breathing, just breathe in that feeling when you bring that situation to mind. That feeling of agitation or suffering or sadness or rage, irritation or fear. And then breathe out whatever you feel might be healing. In breath, we breathe in the difficulty, the suffering. And on the out breath, we breathe out the healing. And now we'll move to universalizing this practice. And so bring to mind groups of people, a large group of people that may be experiencing suffering. You may be in that group. And just imagining sending relief and compassion. All of the people that are in this particular situation, breathing in their frustration, suffering, sadness, fear, rage, and breathing out a sense of spaciousness for them, relief, or whatever you think is helpful. We'll return to our sitting meditation, but as you are transitioning, you could think about radiating out cool, peaceful, and refreshing light to all sentient beings without exception, past, present, and future. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the root of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the root of suffering. Letting your thoughts and images drop away and coming back to a sitting posture or laying down posture. We're just gonna do some shamatha meditation to ground back in the earth and our body in the sky. Just remembering to feel your body breathing. letting thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensation arise and fall on their own. You don't have to stop them. You don't have to stop to look at them. You can just let them pass by. Coming slowly back to your environment, the room you're in. If you need to stretch or have some water or some tea or take some time to come back into your body and your experience. So I want to say that this is can be a very heavy practice. And so it's not something you need to do every day necessarily. But the main thing I would really say about this is that it's really important to have have the stability, clarity, and strength in your sitting practice, really before this becomes a main practice for you. Traditionally, it's actually quite a long practice. You would say, sit for 10 minutes, do Tonglen for 5 minutes, sit for 10 minutes, or 15 minutes. So because Tonglen is so intense, you sit quite a bit on either, particularly on the back end, but you bookend that. But you can also do this on the spot. Like I said, if you are walking or you encounter something, it doesn't have to be this formal practice. You can just send out. You can just experience that. Oh man, experience that suffering. Like particularly if someone's like getting on your nerves, be like, they're suffering, and then just send out that kind of relief. And I don't, for me, one of the ways that this practice is very useful is when I feel helpless. So this week, for me as a Black person in the United States, was very difficult. I mean, every week as a Black person in the United States, but it felt very poignant with the Derek Chauvin verdict coming back and almost simultaneously, 16 Ma'Khia Bryant being murdered. And so the feeling of kind of being in hell was very strong. And I was like, well, okay, I know what that feeling, I know how to work with that feeling of being in hell. Claustrophobic, no way out, scary, feeling of being hunted, lots of fear. And then thinking about, I was thinking a lot about the last seconds of these young people's lives, how scared they must have been, So this practice is helpful for me. And also, when in the immediate, I don't know what to do, it's also helpful for others. So are there any questions that came up for you as you were about the practice, or any experiences you want to share?
I can share my experience.
Sure, Alex, thank you.
This is, and we talked a bit about this earlier this week, but this has been a particularly difficult week for me as well, for the same reasons that you expressed, Shantae, but also on top of that, I really experienced the anti-Blackness amongst colleagues this week in a way that I had never really experienced before, my experience of racism has always been very much from people who don't really know me, right? Like doctors in emergency rooms who've never encountered me before, or police officers who don't know me, or shop clerks who follow me because, they think of me as amorphous, dangerous Black person. And, this was the first time where people who I talk to on an almost daily basis, I had to face their acute and active and willful ignorance and their active and willful racism towards me in a way that was deeply harmful and continues to be harmful, right? And then on the other side of that, the anti-Blackness of students, right? And sometimes from students of color. And, when I was doing Tonglen, that's what I was thinking about. And I was like, oh, when you said we had to think of something related to with us, I was like, no, this is too fresh. This is too much. But as I was doing it, I was struck by how, wow, this is like something that connects me with Black people all over the world. And it's so heart-wrenching, And so, it's just, yeah, it was just really sad, but it also kind of like, does Tonglen help with that? Like, I guess it kind of feels kind of woo-woo, I guess. I don't know, like, what is the, like, how does that help people getting shot on the street, or like people losing their job because folks don't want to face their own stuff? So yeah, that's what came up for me.
Yeah, thank you. So it's a good question, right? Like, it's not political organizing. It's not, and it's not a substitute for political organizing or direct services or abolition or reform or burning it all to the ground, right? But it's a spiritual tool that helps us remain tender so that the ways that the world, the ways that suffering and pain arise don't convince us to shut off. Because that's a lot of, that's a viable defense mechanism to say, fuck it. You know, it is a tool to keep us juicy and tender so that to our experience, whatever it is. And so that instead of the pain of my people being murdered all over the world for, over 500 years, making me hard and bitter. The Bodhisattva is a warrior. And our greatest weapon is this really tender heart that is endlessly renewable resource, right, of compassion that makes me a warrior, and where I'm like, it is my duty to show up for others in the ways that I can. For me personally, there are two main ways that I know that I have unique skills. I am not gonna go to Minnesota. I'm not gonna go to Columbus. Those days are over, right? For me, right? For many, many reasons. But I am a Dharma teacher and I am a professor. And in those two modalities, I can actually hold space for people and transmit what was transmitted to me to help people be in the world differently. That includes holding space for sometimes hostile people. For me personally, I'm able to do that. That's part of my karma to have to do that. Particularly as, a Dharma teacher, I've had many, many situations where some of the people I'm working with are super hostile, because it's dredging up so much for them. But that's my job. It's like the more responsibility, it's like the inverse of capitalism. It's like the more responsibility I have, like, oh, now I'm a teacher, the more accountable I am. It's like inverse, it's not like, oh, you're below me. It's like, no, I'm more and more. That's why I warn people, oh, you want to become a teacher? Okay. You want to become a Dharma teacher? It's more and more accountability. Of course, people do all kinds of great, they abuse people and they do the kind of capitalist route, but it's about holding a lot of space for a lot of people's neurotic patterns. It's exhausting, right? But I'm connected to this unending resource, so that it's not a whammy. It's not like I'm being, I think the example Pema Chodron gives of like, if someone is dying of, AIDS-related complications or cancer, Tonglen is not to heal them. It's to lessen their suffering as they go through their experience, so they can be there for their experience without so much suffering. It's like, it's not a USA movie ending. It's more like a Korean film ending. It's like everyone dies at the end, but with less suffering. And that's the thing, is like, I don't ever want to be distanced from my broken heart. And so this practice is very hard. I want to just say that it's not something you're expected to do. You could just put this on the shelf, know it's there, but just like, oh, I'm not there. I don't want to do that. Because first we have to really work with ourselves, stabilizing our mind, our body, our speech, our emotions, clarifying, and then strengthening all those things. That's what shamatha practice does. It's stable, it's clear, it's stability, clarity, and strength, right? So our mind can actually hold really, 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 really difficult things. So that's why that practice is so important, and that it goes in these kind of stages and steps, not as a kind of hierarchy, but it's like, what do they say? You got to crawl before you walk, right? It's like how we learn. It's like, anything, building. And if it feels too much, it's not something you have to do. It's that simple. Are there other questions or thoughts?
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I want to say thank you, Shante, for holding this space for us. I really appreciate. And I just have to say that it was definitely this Tonglen practice that we did together for me was very different than ever. And I really, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but I really touched the space of my ego protected space that deeply, the space that didn't allow me in my life to see how that ego space caused suffering to other people. And it was, and at the same time, I was able to feel the freshness. But that it was, at the beginning, I was not able to, I was almost like, it was too different. Like I was in a dualistic split space. And, but then when we went back to the shamatha practice, so we ended Tonglen, I really had this sensation that the breath is a continuous movement. It's not split. So then the circle of in and out, it's a circle. And in that continuity of practice and be in and out and in and out, that's my practice. Just stay in, don't split. So thank you.
Wow, that was like fucking profound. Yeah, it's like sometimes I have a similar experience where I feel myself really trying to get somewhere. I want to go deeper. I'm like so hungry to like get something. And then it's like that when I relax and I just am in that experience and I'm like, oh, right. Like this is actually wakefulness, is when I'm just in my experience. It's not floating and, doing tricks. I mean, yeah, people have all kinds of experiences and powers and whatever, but that's not what, like, you know, it's like this ability to be right here and experience my neuroses, experience my relaxation, experience my frustration, experience my questions, experience my peace. All of those things are arising, and that's, I'm just staying there for that. And it's like, and then again, and then again, and then again, and then again, and then again. And I think because so much of our experience is shaped by the invention of time, right? And like, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then at this stage you do this, and then at this stage you do this, and then that's how you measure success, is through some kind of water, you know, these watershed, you know, at this stage of your life, this is supposed to be happening. And then, and in practice, it's just, it's actually, there's none of that. It's just right here. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing. It just happens. Actually, through practicing, we get there. But if you try to like manufacture it, it's not, you know. And that's actually the total difference between, you know, how we're evaluated in our world. So the only evaluation here is just our breath. It's just like, am I being kind to myself in this experience? Okay, I'm not. Okay, that's okay too. And then that's an act of kindness by recognizing I'm not being kind, right? There's no, we can't escape it, you know? And then it's like, am I, this is so hard. I can't tell you how much it breaks my heart when I hear people say I had a bad meditation. I'm like, who has taught you that? You know, it's like, if you meditated, that's great. You know? Because it actually means that you are taking the time to be with your experience and to then see what arises. And it's very, very hard. So, you know, some of you have been practicing for a long time, some not so long. So I've been practicing for a relatively long time. And what I find is that my practice continues to change. You know, I'm going through a time that's so hard right now. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is sit. It's like literally maybe like, you know, clean the grout out of my shower is like, you know, or clean the like soap scum is like underneath, but it, because it's means I then am with my experience, and I do. I say, okay, there are all kinds of, you know, I'm in a walking meditation phase right now, and that gets me right into my experience, or other practices that get me right into my experience. So yeah, it's very, we have these moments, and the great thing is we do have these moments where we're like, oh, aha, okay, all right, you know, that's what's arising. So yeah, it's really beautiful. Thank you. I see some things in the chat. Hold on, let me just click there. Oh, okay, it's just, okay, great.
So I don't know, lots of observations. Like, I feel like I've had a number of aha moments the last couple of weeks, but I've known for a while that like so much of my practice has to do with me creating healthy boundaries for myself, figuring out how to show up for myself and show up for other people. And for so much of my life, like I have almost like pathologically put other people first. I'm always like externally looking to everybody else's suffering and wanting to do something about that. And just, so I don't think I could have I had a really good practice with Tonglen today. It was very powerful. And I don't know that I could have done that a year ago. I think it would have been, and I had, sorry, this, you know, on top of this, this was, you know, the last couple of weeks have been intense for everybody, right? And I haven't always known like where to direct that energy or what to do. So through Lama Rod's, when, you know, his love and rage thing, there was also a Tonglen practice. So I found myself doing that a little bit. And then through my personal interactions, my son made a new friend and his mother stresses me the fuck out. Like, like anxiety spiral the last couple of times I've interacted with her. And I haven't known what to do with that, right? Like she's clearly like intensely suffering and I am intensely taking it on. And anyway, so this has like slowly helped me deal with that, to both create the boundary that I need, but also to, I don't know, send out some like healing energy. And like when I'm actually in her presence, I think I'll be able to use it a little bit. So anyway.
That's really great. Oh, that's so beautiful to hear. It's yeah, sometimes I'm like, wow, this person's an asshole. Like that's my first thought. And then something, I don't know, something happens and just like makes me like look a little deeper. And then it all kind of melts and I see, I can like experience their suffering. And it doesn't mean like, oh, let's be best friends and let me, blah, blah. I'm just like, I'm like, oh, they're actually in pain. And then that's a reorientation for me.
And not only a reorientation, but I'm able to say like, okay, this is your pain. And this is my suffering, like my shit, like however I'm reacting to your pain is mine.
That's right.
And
That's right.
to be able to kind of work through that and create a boundary, but at the same time, experience
That's right.
it.
That's right. Beautiful. Beautiful. And it's like, yeah, it's like a shift that goes from defensiveness,
Right.
like we're enemies almost,
Right.
to like understanding the dynamic. And I just feel it in my heart. And sometimes it's very overwhelming. I have to like I'm like, I have to get away, you know, but it's like, it's just like, okay, I'm just going to be here. Right. And it's like this protection. I'm not like overwhelmed by I'm not like, I'm going to fix you. I'm going to be undifferentiated, but it's just like, oh, I'm here and we're both experiencing some level of suffering. And I have tools to help me not suffer. I can just experience pain, you know, without suffering. And then it's like, okay, I don't have to put that distancing thing in, like the judgment or the caretaking.
Yes.
That then both of those things pull me away from my experience of tenderness, of like heartbreak, of like, you know, sometimes there's a funny meme going around on TikTok and Instagram where it's like, anyway, so there's some song, I don't even know, I have never seen the original, but it's basically these two people singing a crazy song. And it's, and then people have been taking it and they are acting out these funny situations. So one is a scenario where a guy gets off the train at 125th Street in Harlem and he sees like a crazy person from McDonald's like on the street, a freestyle rapper, people he's calling zombies, and then a guy selling incense. It's just like a whole crazy New York scene. And last night I just had like a craving for hot chips. Okay, don't ask, whatever. I was like, I need some hot Cheetos. Like I just have to have them. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna just give into that. And literally across the street, there were like a guy, you know, everyone has these scooters now, these motorized. There's like one guy revving his scooter, another guy's rapping. Another woman is like running around with a plastic bag. And I was like, oh my God, it's like the zombie gif. And it was just like, I was like, it's just literal insane. It's just craziness, right? And I'm like, and I could just take it in, like, you know, a guy walking on the street screaming about whatever is externalizing whatever's in his head. And I was like, the thought that came to me was like, people are suffering. And it was also hilarious. Like, it was just humorous. And also it was like, wow, man, like, shit, we are going through it. at different levels. Some people at really rock bottom levels, like really serious, dangerous levels, and all the way, to more subtle, but it's for real. And then just keeping your heart open to that reality and not being like, well, people suck, or, that's not me, or, and at the same time, not trying to be like, oh, I can't do anything, it's so hard, but just experiencing it. It's very difficult,
How to keep an open heart and to be present without taking it on.
The classical example, which is a little, I don't know, they're always so macabre, is like there is the classical example from Buddhism of compassion is a mother with no arms who sees her child is drowning in a river. Right? That's the classical example, and then, from the Buddhist point of view, they say, all beings have been our mother, and we've been mother to all beings, so that we actually experience deep heartbreak, but there's nothing to do in that moment but to actually be there for the experience. That's not our work in that moment. In other moments, when we're doing Tonglen or we're doing practice, in that moment, what we're supposed to be doing is the practice. Because sometimes what happens is when we're practicing, then we're like, oh, okay, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to make a list. And it's like, no, like first just sit with the experience before we want to go do. And then that can inform how we do things and when we do things and with whom we do things and where we do them. But while we're practicing, Yeah. So we have a couple more minutes before it is our time to wrap up.
I'd like to share a little bit if I could.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
The texture one, I very much was visualizing. And then when we moved to more specific, it was when I was breathing out, I was still visualizing this kind of open space. Yesterday was my last day of being a shelter director at a homeless shelter for 2.5 years. And the experience I was experiencing that was difficult was my experience of being at the shelter and the amount of trauma that was there. I couldn't withstand the trauma anymore. I had to leave. And I can't think of the word, the privilege to walk away from that. Those men do not. And I'm just feeling a lot of different things about that. I just think I'll be crying a lot lately. And that's okay. It's not something that's easy for me to do. So this was helpful today. I think that's all I can share right now, but thank you all.
Chris. It's really hard to be a human being, I have to say. And I think experiencing how much suffering there is in the world. And for many of us, I don't know, this was my story. I didn't really get like clear messages on how to deal with difficulty because my parents didn't get clear, guidance because their parents didn't get, And so when I came to, particularly, you know, I'd been in other religious communities. I was always like very interested in being in a religious community. I was like not great at being like, I'll just find my own way. That doesn't really work for me. I like the communal aspect of of ritual. And there's a great book, find it, called, oh, I can't find it. Here it is. The Buddha's Wife. And it tells the story of Yashodhara, who was married to Siddhartha, who he, abandoned just like her and their child, Rahula, to go find himself. I mean, it always cracks me up. We're like, oh my goodness, I want to be Buddha. It's like, yo, this dude straight up left his wife and kids. That's deep, right? And it tells the story. It's sort of historical. It's like speculative history. And there's a great line where she's really upset because they were, how the book narrates it is that they were spiritual partners. They weren't just like husband and wife. They were deeply in love, and they were also, spiritual partners, and she was like, why didn't he tell me, or why didn't he take me with him? And there's this great section about compassion that I just want to read. And it talks about her relationship also with Pajapati, her mother-in-law. Well, she was officially the Buddha's aunt, but then ended up raising him. And they both actually became enlightened. I think one became a great arhat and one became a great enlightened practitioner. And their son, Rahula, is at least in the Tibetan tradition, is a great protector of the tradition. So I'm gonna read this part about compassion. Bear with me. Together with Pajapati, the women who had been keeping watch over Yashodhara and her baby soon understood that it was too consuming for each of them to care for her alone. She was angry and bitter, withdrawn and lethargic. There was no respite from her bitterness and guilt. To be alone with her was too painful for any one of them for any length of time. And so Pajapati arranged for Yashodhara and all the other women of the palace to gather together at dawn in a grove of pines, shaded by the deep green of the ancient trees. Beside a pool there, a small Hindu temple had served as a sacred site for millennia, a doorway for their prayers to the panoply of gods. It had become known as the temple of the goddess of fertility, where Yashodhara and Siddhartha had made many offerings and prayers before she became pregnant. One morning, the women of the palace and their servants waited in the cool, misty air. They listened as the birds began their day. Pajapati entered with Yashodhara, supporting her by the arm. Yashodhara, head cast down, sat down in the grove. Her body seemed to have caved in. Her face was flat, her eyes puffy, mirror slits. The others sat in a circle around her. One woman lit incense. Pajapati began to chant the Hindu prayers. It was as if the energy that existed on the ground in that grove, beneath those ancient trees, and beside that pool and temple, was being called forth to meet the desperate Yashodhara and the circle around her. The dawn prayers and shared chants, the moments of silence, seemed to gather the old, deep energies of the earth and nature to focus it amongst the circle of women. Yashodhara's tears seemed unending. She wept in silence. The gathering that morning didn't last long. There was work to do, but it had a calming effect. The women decided to meet again at dusk, and this simple ritual practice seemed to take hold and then take shape. The morning prayers were chanted to ask for help for the day from the goddesses and gods. The evening gathering was to give thanks to all the gods for their daily care, asking for help, giving thanks every morning, every evening. They called it the gathering at the grove, their circle of compassion. And then it goes on to talk about how the practice helps Yashodhara to heal. But that's what we do for each other. And I think that's particularly why the Sangha or community of practitioners is helpful, because we do practice on our own, of course, but the circle, someone was saying this yesterday, you know, is sacred geography and geometry. I mean, we're in a Zoom circle, but the holding space for each other and practicing with each other strengthens our own ability to be in the world, in our own practice. We don't have to do it alone, you know? So that, what I will do is I'm going to, I'll send you the name of the Pema Trojan book, but I will make a copy of the, because it's a small book, the Tonglen on the Cushion chapter. It's about 18 pages, but it's like a little book. So it's like probably 4 pages really. And I'll send that as a PDF early in the week. And then I'll also can send you the name of this book, The Buddha's Wife, that I some people don't like it because it's kind of like speculative, but I find it really beautiful because there's not a lot of history about her. And she was a really important, she was the reason, basically her and her mother-in-law, the reason that women were actually allowed to become monastics. It took 12 years. You know,
So eventually she meets back up with Buddha at some point?
As his student, yeah.
That's deep. So it's historical fiction?
Yeah, I mean, historically it's true that she and her mother-in-law became, they like shaved their heads and they were like, you are going to, you know, because of the time, it was like women were considered bad, being born a woman was considered bad karma, right? And so, I mean, it's still a little bit,
like,
but
that's so wild though. Like you literally, humanity couldn't exist without women, yet somehow.
well, you have to like take that power away, right? Right, like if men, they always say if men could give birth, like, anyway, but so eventually she and her mother-in-law became the first nuns, and I mean there's all kinds of problematic things, but yeah, they built this practice of women in the grove, mostly women. There were some men too. So thank you all, and I'll also send out this recording to folks. Thank you so much. I just want to say, you know, you helped me by showing up. It's like, it's really great for me as well, and I feel so filled up, you know. So thank you for sharing with me and allowing me to share with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shantae, and thank you everyone for holding space.
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye.